Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive structure before him. The Galactic Military Academy stretched into the purple sky of Kepler Station like a metal mountain. Ships from dozens of worlds flew around its towers, carrying cadets from every corner of known space. He adjusted his bag on his shoulder and walked toward the main entrance. Other new arrivals moved alongside him, but Jake could tell immediately that he was different from most of them. The Xanthari cadets towered over everyone else with their 4 arms and blue skin. The insect-like creks made clicking sounds as they communicated with each other. A group of furry wolven cadets padded along on all fours, their keen noses already picking up scents from their new home. Jake was just human. Average height, brown hair, nothing special to look at. He had passed all the tests to get here, but he still wondered if the academy had made a mistake accepting him. The lobby of the main building buzzed with activity. Hundreds of cadets from different species filled the space, creating a symphony of sounds Jake had never heard before. Some spoke in languages that sounded like music. Others communicated through color changes in their skin. The Babel fish translator in his ear worked overtime to make sense of it all. "Attention, new cadets." A voice boomed through the hall. Jake looked up to see Commander Vel Nash on a raised platform. The 4-armed Xanthari woman stood nearly 7 feet tall, her blue skin marked with the scars of many battles. "You are here because you represent the best your worlds have to offer. For the next 4 years, you will train together, fight together, and learn what it means to protect the galaxy." Jake listened as the commander explained the rules and expectations. The academy brought together young beings from 43 different worlds. They would study military tactics, space combat, diplomacy, and dozens of other subjects. Most importantly, they would learn to work as a team despite their many differences. "You will be assigned to mixed species units," Velnesh continued. "Your success depends not on your individual strength, but on how well you cooperate with beings unlike yourself. Some of you come from warrior cultures, others from peaceful worlds. You must learn from each other." After the speech, Jake found his room assignment and made his way through the winding corridors. The academy was huge, with sections designed for different types of beings. Some areas had thicker atmosphere for species that needed it. Others had different gravity settings or special lighting. Jake's room was in the standard humanoid section. He shared a suite with 3 other cadets. His first roommate was Danny Cruz, another human from Earth. Danny came from Texas and had an easy smile that made Jake feel less alone. "Can you believe we made it?" Danny asked as they unpacked their few belongings. "Out of millions of humans who applied, only 12 got accepted this year." Their other roommates arrived soon after. Crix was a young Xanthari with only 2 arms, which marked him as unusual among his people. He spoke softly and seemed nervous about being so far from home. The 4th roommate was Gorvek, a stocky being from a heavy-gravity world called Boron Prime. His people were known for their incredible strength and their love of mining. The first few days passed in a blur of orientation sessions, medical exams, and placement tests. Jake discovered that the academy expected a lot from its cadets. They woke before dawn for physical training, spent the morning in academic classes, and used the afternoon for practical exercises. Jake struggled with some of the physical requirements. The obstacle courses were designed to challenge beings with enhanced strength and speed. He watched Xanthari cadets leap over walls that he had to climb. Wolven cadets ran through sections of the course so fast they became blurs. But Jake noticed something else. While the other species excelled at tasks that used their natural abilities, they sometimes struggled with problems that required different kinds of thinking. In tactical planning classes, Jake found himself seeing solutions that others missed. When they studied military history, he recognized patterns that seemed invisible to his classmates. The real test came during their first combat simulation. Jake was assigned to a mixed team led by a cadet named Zektar. The Vorthak stood almost 8 feet tall, with natural armor plating covering his arms and chest. His people were famous throughout the galaxy as warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Galactic Alliance. Zektar looked down at Jake with obvious disdain. "So the Academy is taking pets now," he said in a voice like grinding stone. What exactly is a human supposed to contribute to a warrior's team? Jake kept his voice level. I'll do my part. Your part? Zektar laughed, a harsh sound that made other cadets turn to look. Your species has been in space for what, 50 years? My people were conquering star systems before your world even invented the wheel. The simulation took place in a virtual city under attack. Their team had to rescue civilians while fighting off enemy forces. Jake suggested they split into smaller groups to cover more ground, but Zektar dismissed the idea immediately. Vorthak do not run and hide, he declared. We face our enemies with honor. Zektar led them straight into the center of the battle zone. The team moved in a tight formation, relying on their superior firepower to blast through enemy positions. For a while it seemed to work. The Vorthak's strength and the other species' natural abilities let them punch through the first few enemy lines. But the simulation was designed to be more complex than a simple fight. While they were busy with frontal assaults, enemy forces circled around behind them. Civilians died while the team was stuck in prolonged battles. By the time the exercise ended, they had failed most of their objectives. Jake watched the after-action review with growing frustration. The instructor, a veteran Krex officer, pointed out their mistakes with clinical precision. They had been too aggressive, too focused on direct confrontation, too slow to adapt when their initial plan failed. Perhaps, Jake said during the discussion, we should have considered asymmetric tactics. If we had used smaller teams to— No. One asked for your opinion, human, Zektar interrupted. You would not understand real warfare. Jake felt his face grow hot, but he kept quiet. Around the room, other cadets nodded in agreement with Zektar. Jake realized that most of them saw humans the same way, as a curiosity, a primitive species that had somehow survived long enough to reach the stars, but had nothing to offer more. Advanced civilizations. That night, Jake lay in his bed thinking about the day. He had come to the academy hoping to prove that humans belonged among the galactic community. Instead, he was learning that most of the galaxy saw his people as harmless weaklings who needed protection from the real warriors. He thought about his brother back on Earth, a Marine who had served in 3 different conflicts. He thought about the human military instructors who had prepared him for the academy, men and women who had earned their knowledge through hard experience. They had taught him that every species had something to offer, but they had also taught him that respect was something you earned, not something you were given. As Jake drifted off to sleep, he decided he would have to find a way to earn that respect. He just hoped he would get the chance to show what humans were really capable of when they stopped trying to be polite and started trying to survive. The harassment started small. Jake would return to his room to find his equipment moved or missing. His datapad would mysteriously lose important files right before major assignments. During mealtimes, other cadets would bump into him hard enough to spill food on his uniform. At first, Jake thought it was just bad luck. The academy was a big place with thousands of cadets from different worlds. Accidents happened, but Danny noticed the pattern first. This isn't random, Danny said one evening as Jake cleaned food stains from his 3rd uniform of the week. Someone is doing this on purpose. Jake had suspected the same thing, but hearing it said out loud made it real. He looked around their room and saw that his other roommates were avoiding eye contact. Krix busied himself with his studies while Gorvek suddenly found his equipment very interesting to examine. You guys know something, Jake said. Krix finally looked up, his young face troubled. It is Zektar, he said quietly. He has been talking to others about humans. He says your species is weak and does not belong here. What kind of things is he saying? Danny asked. Gorvek shifted uncomfortably. He tells stories about human history. He says your people never conquered other worlds because you were too weak to leave your home planet. He says the only reason humans are here is because the Academy felt sorry for you. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. And what do you think? I think, Krix said carefully, that every species has strengths. But many here do not see what human strengths might be. The harassment got worse over the following weeks. Jake would arrive at training sessions to find his equipment sabotaged. His combat armor would have loose straps that came apart during exercises. His weapons would be set to the wrong power levels, making him look incompetent during marksmanship training. Other human cadets were experiencing the same problems. Sarah Blake, a quiet girl from Colorado, found her tactical planning assignments deleted from the academy computers multiple times. Danny discovered that his physical training scores were being recorded incorrectly, making him appear weaker than he actually was. The instructors seemed to notice nothing. When Jake tried to report the incidents, they treated his complaints as excuses for poor performance. Commander Velnash listened politely when Jake explained about the sabotage, but her expression suggested she thought he was making up stories to cover his failures. "Young Morrison," she said after Jake finished his report, "the academy is a challenging environment. All cadets must learn to overcome obstacles and adapt to difficult situations. Perhaps you should focus more on improving your performance and less on finding reasons why you are struggling." Jake left her office feeling more alone than ever. It was clear that the academy staff saw humans as a charity case, allowed to attend but not expected to succeed. They believed that if humans were having problems, it was because they were not good enough, not because someone was actively working against them. The situation reached a new level during a joint training exercise in the Academy's combat simulator. Jake's team was assigned to clear a hostile space station of enemy forces. Zektar was not on his team this time, but several of the Vorthak's friends were. The exercise started normally. Jake's team moved through the simulated corridors, working together to identify and neutralize threats. Jake found himself taking point, using his smaller size to scout ahead and provide intelligence to his teammates. Everything was going well until they reached the station's central hub. Jake was examining a control panel when he heard movement behind him. He turned to see that his teammates had moved back toward the entrance, leaving him alone in the center of the room. "Hey," Jake called out. "Where are you going?" "Sorry, human," one of them replied. "Orders from someone who outranks you." The simulation suddenly changed. Instead of fighting enemy forces, Jake found himself surrounded by hostile targets with no backup. His teammates had abandoned him in the middle of the exercise, leaving him to face overwhelming odds alone. Jake fought as hard as he could, but the scenario was designed for a full team. Within minutes, his character was eliminated from the simulation. The exercise ended with a complete failure for his team. During the debrief, the instructor criticized Jake harshly for poor leadership and tactical awareness. No mention was made of his teammates abandoning their positions. When Jake tried to explain what had happened, the instructor cut him off. "Excuses are the mark of a weak leader, Cadet Morrison. A true officer adapts to changing circumstances rather than complaining about them." Jake sat in silence for the rest of the session, but inside he was burning with rage. He could see Zektar and his friends smirking at him from across the room. They had orchestrated the whole thing, and the instructors either did not care or actively supported their actions. That night, Jake could not sleep. He walked the halls of the academy, thinking about everything that had happened. He passed other cadets who looked at him with mixtures of pity and contempt. Some whispered to each other as he went by, probably discussing the latest human failure. Jake found himself in the Academy's library, a vast space filled with information from thousands of worlds. He sat at a terminal and began researching the other species at the Academy. He read about Vorthak military traditions, Zenthari honor codes, and Krek's tactical doctrines. What he found was interesting. Every species had impressive military histories, but they all followed similar patterns. They relied on their natural advantages: strength, speed, natural weapons, or enhanced senses. Their tactics were straightforward and honorable, designed around direct confrontation and superior force. Jake thought about human military history, which he had studied extensively before coming to the Academy. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years, developing tactics that had nothing to do with natural advantages. They had learned to win through cunning, adaptation, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. But Jake was beginning to understand that the Academy did not want cunning or adaptation. They wanted him to play by rules designed by and for species that were naturally stronger than humans. They expected him to fail, and they were making sure he did. As Jake walked back to his room, he made a decision. He had been trying to fit in, trying to prove that humans could succeed by alien standards. But maybe it was time to show them what human standards looked like. The next morning brought news that would change everything. During breakfast, Commander Velnash announced a new training exercise. All cadets would participate in individual combat assessments in the Academy's main gymnasium. They would be tested on hand-to-hand combat skills against opponents from different species. Jake looked across the dining hall and saw Zektar staring at him with a predatory smile. The Vorthak had been waiting for an opportunity like this, a chance to humiliate a human in front of the entire Academy. Jake stared back without flinching. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, he was not worried about fitting in or making friends. He was thinking about his brother's advice before he left Earth. Sometimes, Jake, you have to show your teeth before people will respect you. The time for showing teeth was about to arrive. The gymnasium buzzed with excitement as cadets gathered for the combat assessments. The massive space could hold over 1,000 beings, with viewing platforms arranged around multiple fighting areas. Jake walked onto the main floor and felt hundreds of eyes watching him. He had spent the morning preparing differently than usual. Instead of reviewing Academy combat techniques, he had thought about lessons from his brother back on Earth. Real fighting was not like the formal sparring they taught at the Academy. Real fighting was about survival. Today you will demonstrate individual combat skills, Commander Velnash announced from the central platform. You will face opponents from different species to test your ability to adapt to various fighting styles. Remember, this is not about winning or losing. This is about showing courage and skill under pressure. Jake knew that was not true. This was about proving who belonged at the Academy and who did not. The other cadets expected him to fail, to prove once and for all that humans were too weak for military service. The first matches began on different fighting mats around the gymnasium. Jake watched as cadets from various species faced each other in formal combat. The fights followed strict rules with protective gear and referees to stop the action if anyone got hurt. Zektar dominated his first opponent, a smaller Zenthari cadet who could not match the Vorthak's raw power. The 8-foot warrior moved with surprising speed for his size, using his natural armor and claws to control the fight completely. When it ended, Zektar looked directly at Jake and smiled. Jake's first match was against a wolven cadet named Rexus. The wolf-like being dropped to all fours and circled Jake like a hunter stalking prey. Rexus was faster and had natural weapons, but Jake had studied wolven fighting patterns in the library. When Rexus lunged, Jake was ready. He stepped aside at the last second and used the alien's momentum against him, sending the wolven crashing into the mat. The fight was over quickly, much to the surprise of the watching crowd. Jake's second opponent was tougher. Vorak came from a heavy gravity world and possessed incredible strength. The stocky alien charged straight forward, trying to overpower Jake with brute force. But Jake had learned something important watching the other fights. Everyone expected direct confrontation. Instead of meeting Vorak's charge head-on, Jake dropped low and swept the alien's legs. When Vorak hit the ground, Jake was already moving, using a chokehold that cut off blood flow to the alien's brain. Vorak tapped out within seconds. The gymnasium grew quieter as Jake won match after match. He was not stronger or faster than his opponents, but he fought differently than they expected. While they relied on natural advantages, Jake used technique, timing, and strategy. Between matches, Jake noticed the other cadets looking at him with new expressions. The pity and contempt were fading, replaced by something that might have been respect or maybe fear. Even some of the instructors were paying attention now. Finally, the moment Jake had been expecting arrived. Commander Velnash called out the next pairing, Morris and Jake, Zektar of Vorthak Prime. The gymnasium fell completely silent. This was the match everyone had been waiting for, the human who thought he belonged here against the warrior who would put him in his place. Jake walked to the center mat where Zektar was already waiting. The Vorthak towered over him, natural armor gleaming under the lights. His claws were retracted, for safety, but Jake could see the points beneath his fingertips. "This should be quick," Zektar said loud enough for nearby cadets to hear. "I will try not to hurt you too badly, little human." Jake did not respond. He was looking at Zektar, with new eyes seeing weaknesses instead of strengths. The Vorthak was big and strong, but size could be a disadvantage if you knew how to use it. The referee, a three-eyed Krex instructor, signaled for them to begin. Zektar moved forward confidently, expecting Jake to back away or try to circle around him. Instead, Jake stepped directly into the alien's reach. Zektar swung with his right hand, aiming to end the fight immediately. But Jake had been watching the Vorthak fight all day. He knew exactly how the alien moved, how he telegraphed his attacks, where his balance points were. Jake ducked under the swing and drove his elbow into Zektar's ribs, right where the natural armor plates separated. The Vorthak grunted in surprise and pain. No one had ever found that weak spot before. Before Zektar could recover, Jake grabbed the alien's arm and used a hip throw that sent the 8-foot warrior crashing to the mat. The impact shook the floor and sent a vibration through the entire gymnasium. But Zektar was not finished. He rolled away and came up swinging, his confidence replaced by anger. He began attacking with everything he had, using his claws and armor to try to overwhelm the smaller human. Jake stayed calm. He had been in real fights before, not the formal sparring matches they practiced at the academy. He knew that anger made fighters sloppy. That rage could be used as a weapon against an opponent. Every time Zektar attacked, Jake was somewhere else. He moved like water around the alien's powerful strikes, occasionally landing precise hits on pressure points and joint lines. The Vorthak grew more frustrated with each missed attack. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the humans systematically dismantled their champion. Jake was not just winning, he was making it look easy. He moved with a fluid grace that made Zektar's powerful attacks seem clumsy and predictable. The end came suddenly. Zektar overextended on a wild swing, leaving himself completely open. Jake stepped inside the alien's guard and struck with surgical precision. His fist found the nerve cluster at the base of Zektar's neck, a target he had learned about from human anatomy studies. Zektar's eyes rolled back and he collapsed to the mat, unconscious before he hit the ground. The referee stared in shock for several seconds before raising Jake's hand to signal victory. The gymnasium erupted in noise as cadets from dozens of species began talking at once. Jake stood over Zektar's unconscious form, breathing steadily and showing no signs of fatigue. He looked around the crowd and saw something he had never seen before in alien eyes. Fear. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Jake Morrison was not the weak human who needed protection. He was the predator who had been pretending to be prey. And everyone in the gymnasium now knew what humans were capable of when they stopped being polite and started being honest about what they were. The age of underestimating humanity had just ended with a single fight that lasted less than 2 minutes. Jake stood in the center of the gymnasium as medical staff rushed to help Zektar. The Vorthak warrior was alive but unconscious. His massive form sprawled across the fighting mat like a fallen tree. Around the room, hundreds of alien cadets stared at Jake with expressions he had never seen before. Commander Velnash pushed through the crowd, her forearms moving in agitation. She knelt beside Zektar and checked his pulse, then looked up at Jake with something that might have been suspicion or respect. "How did you do that?" she asked. Jake wiped blood from a small cut on his cheek where one of Zektar's claws had grazed him. "I fought back." "That was not fighting back," said Dr. Kent, the Academy's chief medical officer. The elderly Zenthari was examining Zektar with his scanner. "That was surgical precision. You struck exactly the right spot to cause unconsciousness without permanent damage. How did you know where to hit?" Jake realized he was at a crossroads. He could give them the simple answer they expected, or he could tell them the truth about what humans really were. He looked around the silent gymnasium and made his choice. "I studied," Jake said. "I learned about Vorthak anatomy, nervous systems, and fighting patterns. I spent weeks in the library researching every species at this academy." Commander Velnash stood up slowly. "You studied how to fight us?" "I studied how to survive," Jake corrected. "That is what humans do. We learn about threats and we prepare for them." The word threats sent a ripple through the crowd. Jake had not called them enemies or opponents. He had called them threats, and every alien in the room understood the difference. Dr. Kent helped load Zektar onto a medical transport. "I need to run some tests," he told the commander. But I want to examine the human as well. That level of precision is not normal for a cadet. Jake found himself in the medical bay an hour later, sitting on an examination table while Dr. Kent ran various scans. The doctor's 4 hands moved over control panels with practiced efficiency. Interesting, Dr. Kent murmured as he reviewed the results. Your stress hormones are already back to normal levels. Your heart rate is steady. Most beings would still be shaking from adrenaline after such a fight. Should I be shaking? Jake asked. You just defeated one of the most dangerous warriors in the academy. Yes, you should be showing signs of stress. Dr. Kent looked at him with new eyes. But you are not, are you? This was not unusual for you. Jake thought about his answer carefully. Where I come from, you learn to stay calm during fights. Panic gets you killed. Where you come from, Dr. Kent repeated. You mean Earth? I mean humanity. Dr. Kent was quiet for a long moment. Then, he asked, what exactly is humanity, Cadet Morrison? Jake looked at the doctor and decided to give him an honest answer. We are survivors. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to adapt or die. We learned to fight or become food. We learned that the strongest does not always win, but the smartest usually lives. And what did you learn about us? That you are all very good at being what you are, Jake said. Vorthak are strong, Xanthari are fast, Wolven are quick. But you have been so good at being what you are that you forgot how to be anything else. Dr. Kent's eyes widened. You mean we are predictable? I mean you are specialized. Humans are not specialized, we are adaptable. We can learn to fight like Vorthak when we need strength. We can learn to hunt like Wolven when we need speed. We can learn to think like Xanthari when we need strategy. But we never forget that there is always another way to win. Word of Jake's explanation spread through the academy faster than light-speed communications. Within hours, every instructor and senior cadet had heard about the humans' analysis of galactic species. Some were offended, others were intrigued. All of them were concerned. Commander Velnash called Jake to her office the next morning. She was not alone. Dr. Kent was there, along with several other senior staff members Jake did not recognize. Sit down, Cadet Morrison, the commander said. Her voice was different than before, more formal and careful. We need to discuss your performance yesterday. Jake sat in the chair across from her desk. Did I do something wrong? That depends, said one of the other officers, a scarred Krex veteran named Colonel Thek. Tell us about human military history. Jake blinked in surprise. What do you want to know? Everything, Colonel Thek said. Start with your most recent conflicts and work backwards. Jake spent the next 2 hours talking about human warfare. He told them about modern conflicts, about world wars, about ancient battles and medieval sieges. He explained concepts like guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and total war. He described how humans had learned to fight in every environment from desert to Arctic, from mountains to oceans to space. The alien officers listened in growing silence. Dr. Kent took notes on a data pad, occasionally asking questions about specific tactics or strategies. Commander Velnash's expression grew more troubled with each story. Your species has been at war for how long? She asked when Jake finished. Always, Jake said simply. We have been fighting each other for our entire recorded history. We only stopped fighting each other when we learned there might be others to fight instead. Others to fight? Colonel Thek leaned forward. You mean alien species? Jake realized he had said too much. I mean external threats. Humans prepare for possibilities. What possibilities? Commander Velnash asked. Jake looked around the room, at the alien officers. These were the same beings who had dismissed humans as weak and primitive just days ago. Now they were asking him to explain human military doctrine as if it were some kind of secret weapon. The possibility that not everyone in the galaxy wants peace, Jake said carefully. The possibility that diplomatic solutions do not always work. The possibility that sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in. Dr. Kent looked up from his notes. And you believe all humans think this way? I believe all humans are ready to fight when fighting is necessary, Jake said. We hope for peace, but we prepare for war. We smile and make friends, but we never forget that survival comes first. The room fell silent. Jake could see the officers exchanging glances, having a conversation without words. Finally, Commander Velnash spoke. Cadet Morrison, we are going to make some changes to your training program. We want to learn more about human capabilities and tactical thinking. Are you willing to help us understand your species better? Jake thought about Zektar, still unconscious in the medical bay. He thought about the other human cadets who had been struggling to fit in. He thought about his brother's advice about showing teeth. Yes, ma'am, he said. I think it is time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of. Outside the office, Jake could hear the sounds of the academy continuing its normal routine. But he knew that nothing would be normal anymore. The galaxy was about to discover that the friendly, harmless humans were neither as friendly nor as harmless as they had appeared. The revelation was just beginning. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UGS Defender, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship was his first command assignment after graduating at the top of his class from the Galactic Military Academy. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. His crew was not what anyone would have expected a year ago. Crix operated the communication station, his 2 arms moving quickly over the controls as he monitored dozens of channels. Gorvik managed the engineering systems, his people's natural understanding of heavy machinery making him invaluable. Even Danny Cruz was there, serving as his second-in-command and tactical officer. But the biggest surprise was at the weapons station. Zektar, the Vorthak warrior who had once called humans weak prey animals, now served under Jake's command. The 8-foot alien had requested the assignment personally, much to the shock of his own people. Captain, Crix called from his station, we are receiving a distress signal from the mining colony on asteroid belt 7. They report unknown ships attacking their facilities. Jake walked to the center of the bridge. How far out are we? 20 minutes at maximum speed, Danny reported from the tactical station. Any identification on the attacking ships? Jake asked. Zektar's claws clicked against his console as he analyzed the sensor data. The ships match no known configuration in our databases. They appear to be using hit-and-run tactics against the mining platforms. Jake nodded. Unknown hostiles using guerrilla tactics against civilian targets. Sound familiar? His crew exchanged knowing looks. Over the past 6 months, they had encountered this same pattern in 3 different star systems. Someone was using human-style warfare against galactic colonies, but the attackers were definitely not human. Set course for the asteroid belt, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. Zektar, I want full tactical analysis of the attacking ships. Danny, start planning our approach. Remember what we learned about asymmetric warfare. The bridge crew worked with practiced coordination. Jake had spent months training them in human tactical concepts, teaching them to think beyond their species' natural fighting instincts. The result was a crew that could adapt to any situation instead of relying on standard responses. Captain, Gorvek called from engineering. Engines are at maximum efficiency. We will reach the colony in 18 minutes. Jake settled into his command chair and activated the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are responding to an attack on civilian targets. Based on previous encounters, we expect the hostiles to use unconventional tactics. Stay alert and be ready for anything. As they approached the asteroid belt, the scope of the attack became clear. 3 mining platforms were under assault by a dozen small, fast ships that darted between the asteroids like insects. The attackers were using the asteroid field as cover, making it almost impossible for the colony's defensive systems to target them. Classic human tactics, Danny observed. Use the environment as a weapon and stay mobile. Except these are not humans, Jake said grimly, which means someone has been studying our methods and teaching them to others. Zektar looked up from his station. Captain, I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the attacking ships. They appear to be using some kind of cloaking technology we have not seen before. Jake studied the tactical display. The attacking ships would appear, strike a target, then vanish again among the asteroids, It was effective but predictable once you understood the pattern. They are fighting like humans, Jake said, but thinking like aliens. They are using our tactics but not our adaptability. Danny, can you predict their next target? Danny studied the attack pattern on his screen. Based on their previous strikes, they will hit mining platform Charlie next. It has the weakest defenses and the highest mineral output. Perfect, Jake said. Crix, open a channel to the mining platforms. Tell them to evacuate platform Charlie and make it look like they are abandoning it. Gorvek, can you hide our ship's energy signature? I can make us look like a dead asteroid, Gorvek confirmed. Jake smiled. Then let's give these raiders a taste of real human tactics. Zektar, prepare for close-range combat. We are going to let them come to us. The plan worked perfectly. The attacking ships moved toward platform Charlie exactly as Danny had predicted, expecting to find an easy target. Instead, they found the defender waiting for them with weapons powered and shields at maximum. The battle was over quickly. The raiders had learned human tactics but not human adaptability. When their hit-and-run strategy failed, they had no backup plan. Jake's crew used their mixed species abilities and human tactical thinking to capture half the attacking ships and drive off the rest. In the aftermath, Jake stood in the ship's detention bay looking at their prisoners. The captured raiders were from a species he did not recognize, with gray skin and large black eyes. They refused to answer questions about who had taught them human warfare tactics. They learned our methods, but not our philosophy, Jake told his crew during the debrief. They copied our techniques without understanding why they work. What do you mean? Crix asked. Human tactics work because humans understand that every situation is different, Jake explained. We adapt our methods to fit the circumstances. These raiders just copied what we do without learning how to think like we think. Zektar nodded slowly. This is why you defeated me in the academy. You did not just fight better. You thought differently. Exactly, Jake said. And this is why the academy has changed its training programs. We are not just teaching alien cadets how to fight like humans. We are teaching them how to think like humans when the situation requires it. The changes at the academy had been dramatic. Human tactical instructors now taught courses on adaptive warfare. Cadets from all species learned about psychological operations, unconventional strategies, and the importance of mental flexibility in combat. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned to see humans differently. They were no longer viewed as weak prey animals who needed protection. They were recognized as a species that had survived and thrived on one of the most dangerous worlds in known space, developing skills and instincts that others were only beginning to understand. Captain, Danny said as they set course for their next patrol sector, do you think we will encounter more of these raiders? Jake looked out at the stars and thought about the vast galaxy full of unknown threats and possibilities. Probably, he said. But that is what humans do. We face the unknown and we adapt to survive it. And now we have allies who understand that survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest. What is it about then? Crix asked. Jake smiled. It is about being ready for anything and never giving up, no matter how bad things get. It is about protecting the people who matter to you, even when the odds are impossible. It is about showing the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for. As the Defender jumped to hyperspace, Jake felt proud of how far they had all come. The Academy had taught him to work with aliens, but his crew had taught him something more important. They had learned that strength came not from what species you were born as, but from who you chose to become when others needed you most. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but it was also full of beings willing to stand together against the darkness, and sometimes that was enough.